Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rebecca Windemer, and this evening I'll be discussing short-termism and why we should favour a move towards long-term decision-making. Short-termism is an ingrained feature of most human and business behaviour. It involves a focus on short-term rewards rather than focusing on the long-term impacts and consequences of our actions. A behavioural economics perspective says that as humans, we have a tendency to discount the future, meaning we focus on initial gains and rewards, often not thinking about the long-term consequences of our actions. However, it is not just our behavioural tendencies that impact our short-termism. There is also often pressure from both governments and the financial markets. Government policies often have short timescales in order to provide quick results and figures. However, focusing on such policies can often lead us to not think about the long-term consequences. Similarly, in the financial markets, we often focus on the short term in order to provide quick results for shareholders. The question posed tonight was short-termism. Should we kick the habit? I will be arguing that not only should we kick the habit, we must kick the habit. Short-term decision-making impacts us as individuals, businesses, and part of the wider global community. A key area in which short-term decision-making is having a negative impact is on the environment. Short-term policies often have a negative impact in terms of climate change because they focus on initial gains and rewards, not thinking of climate change, which is a long-term issue. Climate change is often seen as a distant issue, where the impacts are going to happen a long time in the future. Furthermore, I expect if many of us today think about climate change, we think about the impacts in countries further away from us, and don't initially think of the impacts that are going to happen to ourselves. This is an unsustainable way of thinking. We really need to think about the long-term impacts of our actions in order to be able to tackle climate change. This is also evident in terms of our resource use. A focus on the short term has led us to a situation in which we are over-reliant on fossil fuels. As shown in this diagram, we have an unsustainable reliance on fossil fuels and energy sources that are going to run out. We need long-term investment and long-term planning so we can invest in renewable resources. This is a problem that's only going to get worse in the context of population growth. As shown in this graph, the population is going to increase significantly in the next years. By 2050, the population is going to be almost 10 billion. Furthermore, as industrialising countries grow, they're going to want more and more resources, including fossil fuels. If we carry on thinking in the short term and not planning for this long-term growth, it's going to be completely unsustainable. Over half of the world population now live in urban areas. We need to develop long-term plans for these urban areas to support their growth and development. Long-term thinking involves behavioural changes. A focus on short-term profits is going to lead to situations which are harmful for the environment. I'm sure many of us remember the BP oil spill of 2010 and the terrible consequences of this event. Reports into this incident found that there was a significant focus on the short-term gains and profit-making and a lack of long-term planning. Reports revealed that policies for such incidents were out of date, including both industry policies and government policies. We therefore need to adapt to long-term planning and long-term thinking to ensure that such incidents don't happen again. For businesses, it is essential that we invest in the long term so that we can ensure that our investments are sustainable. This will bring benefits for businesses in terms of long-term rewards, and also long-term investments are likely to be those that are investing in innovative products, benefiting both the business and society. The built environment is another area in which short-term decision-making is having an extremely negative impact. The case study I'd like to discuss this evening is China. Currently, China is using 40% of the world's supplies of cement and steel. However, the average lifespan of new buildings in China is just 25 to 30 years. This is shocking and a completely unsustainable use of resources. In the UK, short-term planning policies are similarly having a negative effect. The policy I'd like to discuss tonight is the permitted development rights of office to residential conversions. This policy was introduced in 2013 in a response to the vacant office market that occurred as a response to the recession. The policy states that office blocks can be converted into residential accommodation without full planning permission. However, this is leading to land patterns and land allocations that are not planning for our future. Currently, as the office market is recovering, offices are finding it difficult to locate in effective locations. Furthermore, such policies do not include any sustainability requirements, meaning that these buildings are not thinking of the long-term impact they'll be having on our environment. Similarly, they do not consider affordable housing. This is adding to a serious problem in the UK, where we have a significant shortage of affordable housing. We need long-term policies to combat such issues as affordable housing, not short-term policies that ignore it. A case study I'd like to discuss to show the impact of this is Premier House in London. This office block was previously home to 160 businesses, many of them small start-up businesses. However, due to the permitted development rights, this office block is being converted into a residential block, meaning that all 160 businesses are having to relocate. This is having a negative impact for both the businesses and the wider economy of the area. Furthermore, the residents that are likely to live in this apartment once it's been converted are not likely to be those on a low income. Research produced here at Reading University has found that urban design decisions often have a short-term focus. The development market often has a focus of 3 to 5 years. However, this is leading to the development of places that are not the kind of places we want to live in the future, and do not consider the needs of ourselves and the future population. If you Google housing development in the UK, you will see a lot of images similar to the one here. Very uniform houses clustered together. Is this really the way we want our urban areas to develop? Instead, we need long-term visions for our urban areas. We want to have long-term strategies and planning policies that set out the way we want our cities and our towns to develop, and how we want them to look in the future, for future generations. It is clear that short-term decisions in planning and design are having negative impacts already. You will see these houses that have only recently been built and are already experiencing the negative impacts of flooding. They've clearly not considered that in 50 or 100 years, flooding is going to be a serious problem and it's going to be a lot worse. How will these new houses cope then? Instead, we need to develop innovative designs that are adaptable and think of the long term. We need to consider the long-term needs of population growth and of weather changes in our designs, so that we'll be adaptable for the future. It is key that we focus on long-term decisions so that the future will be sustainable. As stated in the Brundtland Report of 1987, we must think about future generations. I will end my presentation by reiterating the points I've covered. The fact that short-termism is unsustainable and is leading us to develop places that are not the kind of places we want to live or we want our future generations to live. We need to focus on the long term, thinking about resource use and how we're going to adapt to changes in populations and energy resources. Short-termism, we must kick the habit.